Welcome back to Cinema Flicks and Music Picks. I'm Davy, your host with the most, the beast with the least. The very least we can do today is talk about some of the biggest hitters of them all in Jimmy Stewart catalogue. Well, let's have a look, shall we? We've got You Can't Take It With You, again from Columbia, in a nice media bootleg yesterday. And we've got It's a Wonderful Life from Liberty. In a free colour version, but mostly black and white. We never watch colour versions when they've been colorised, folks. We are the Film Preservation Society. So, let's have a play around. So yesterday, take your minds back, we had a look down at Mr Smith Goes to Washington, and to Washington he did go, and he came across Big Jim. That's right, and the James Taylor himself, not the singer-songwriter, but Big Jim Taylor, the crook who ran the media in the state, and also was going to fund this dam that was going to break Jefferson Smith's idea of having a place for young people to go and learn skills and get out of trouble in the summer. And he was framing Jefferson Smith, wasn't he? And he was played by the villainous, the nasty Ed Arnold. And Ed Arnold is going to come back into our midst right now. So, in You Can't Take It With You, you'd think that our stars would be played by Jimmy Stewart and Jean Arthur, also from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. However, Jean Arthur is top billed. Jimmy Smith, yes, the jazz pianist Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Stewart is third billed. Lionel Barrymore is second billed. And Ed Arnold is fourth billed. Ed Arnold, again, was the villainous Jim Taylor from Mr. Smith. But here, he plays the head of the Kirby family, who are, think the Rockefellers, you know, big shots on Wall Street, major capitalists, and they're buying up this district, 12 block radius. And there's only one house that's a standout that they need to get, but it's owned. The landlord has sold them everything else, but it's all contingent on this one owned property. Otherwise, they can't build this great factory to sell munitions and fund a war. But the father is played by Big Jim from the last movie, Ed Arnold, and he is the venture capitalist saying them all. But his son, the new VP, is played by Jimmy Stewart, and he's dating Jean Arthur, his secretary, whereas she doesn't come from money. She comes from a wonderful family, not rich, not dirt poor, but you know, they're happy-go-lucky, they're carefree, they're bohemian, they're wonderfully close, and their head is Mr. Lionel Barrymore. Guess who owns that one house that won't sell to the Kirbys? That's right, Lionel Barrymore, the head of the Sycamore family. So Lionel Barrymore, we're going to come to again in It's a Wonderful Life, but in this, he plays the most wholesome of wholesome characters. Let's get his shot for you. Here he is. He's Grandpa. Never named, but he's Grandpa. And he is the patriarch, of course, and he is this enchanting figure who delivers the line, "You can't take it with you." So we've got a kind of Romeo and Juliet kind of story here, where Tony, Jimmy Stewart, desperately wants to be with Jean Arthur, but she won't marry him without his parents' approval. And unfortunately, Ed Arnold, and especially his wife, are not approving. They're the stuffiest of stuffed shirts, especially the mother, when they have a meet with both families, the mother looks down on these lovely people, something rotten. I mean, you know, it's a big kind of Walton family, but you know, they are so desperately in love with each other. They just adore each other. Again, lovable eccentrics. Grandpa's on crutches because he was sliding down the banister at the age of 309. Actually, it was to cover up Lionel Barrymore's arthritis. It was crippling. He really couldn't walk, sadly. But yeah, he's irascible. He's hilarious. He's charming, and he's wise. He's as wise as Methuselah. And what you come to learn about him, and I'm not going to go into too many spoilers on this one like I will with It's a Wonderful Life, because I think a lot of people haven't seen this that should. And what you learn from Grandpa is, indeed, you can't take it with you. So you can probably, you know, I say I'm not going to do spoilers, but you can probably see where it's going to go. Where he has said the picture's delivering the message of, you know, what's money? What's money if you don't have friends, family, loved ones, happiness? They've got enough to get by, and when times are tough, they band together. Contrast that to the Kirby's. They don't know their son at all. Jimmy Stewart, the father seems to love his son. He thinks he's doing everything right by his son, but he doesn't know his son. He doesn't know that Jimmy Stewart's a romantic, but free. He's got the wanderlust. Doesn't really want to follow in his father's footsteps. And Ed Arnold has such a talent in this film that he didn't get to show Mr. Smith, for making you see that maybe once he was a young dreamer, and maybe he had to follow in his father's footsteps like a Rockefeller, and that he might have given up his dreams and ambitions and become the stuffy old bank boss, you know, the supremo, and forgotten things about himself and about his dreams, and packed them away and never taken them out again. And it might take a meeting with a wonderful old eccentric to bring that back out in him. And that's really all I'm going to say about this movie, because I think it's so wonderful that if you haven't seen it, and I think this is the one of the Capras that if you're a Jimmy Stewart fan, you're least likely to have seen, although it did win Best Picture and Best Director at the time. I think this is the one that you're least likely to have seen now, because it's not stayed in the zeitgeist like Mr. Smith, because it's not political. And it's not stayed in the zeitgeist like It's a Wonderful Life, because, well, It's a Wonderful Life went out of copyright and was just shown very cheaply on television for so many years that it became a staple. We'll talk about that in a minute, actually. But I think it's well worth your time going back and evaluating this. Some of the reviews of this say the reason it's kind of been forgotten is it's too idealistic, that it's too dreamer-like, and to them I say, no. What good are the dreamers if they can't bring society up a bit? What good are having ideals if you can't be an idealist? We may as well dream big. If we fall short, at least we had the dream for a while. It's better than not having dreams at all, isn't it? So in a world full of Kirby's, be a sycamore. There's some moments in this that I really desperately want to talk about, but it's just so wonderful and romantic in the classical sense. I mean, it is a romantic comedy in some, you could guess that from there, but it's wonderfully romantic in the classical sense. That you're going to be charmed off your feet. I mean, the back calls it a screwball comedy. I don't think so. It's not got the pace of a screwball comedy. It's not got the rat-a-tat dialogue. It lets things fester for a little bit. I shouldn't use the word fester because that implies decay or something. It lets things lay. It lets pauses occur. It doesn't rush. It lets messages sink in. And when messages aren't there, but maybe it's just a feeling, an emotion, a moment, a facial expression, an act of kindness, it just lets the moment breathe a little bit. So I don't think that happens in Screwball. Screwball is rat-a-tat-tat. Think Frank Capra's own. It happened one night with Clark Gable. Perfect example, much faster paced than this, with a much more intentional, witty dialogue, whereas this is homespun wit. And there's sometimes it's over the top eccentric. Everybody in the house has a quirk, but that's really because they all come from the same. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're called sycamore. They come from the same tree. They're all branches on the same tree. So yeah, that is all I want to say about. You can take it with you. And again, the message of it, that what have you got if you don't have friends, family, good times and memories, and people don't think fondly of you, very much ties in, and it's why I made this the double bill rather than Mr. Smith, and that it very much ties into the message of It's a Wonderful Life. This we can't spoil. Almost everybody, surely, especially if you're watching Jimmy Stewart, will have seen It's a Wonderful Life. So George Bailey is our erstwhile hero, and he's a hero again in a classical sense, not because of great acts, but because of a lifetime of small acts. He puts away his dreams to help others just have a better day. George will, he's supposed to go to Europe, he's supposed to go to college, he gives that all up and he never complains. He gives it all up because his father's had a stroke, because his brother needs the tuition, because he's fallen for Donna Reed, because the family business means more to him than Mr. Potter, the villain. The villain played by Lionel Barrymore. Where did I put it? Oh, you can take it with you. It seems somebody's gone off with it now. Played by Lionel Barrymore, who we fell in love with as Grandpa here, is the villainous Mr. Potter here. And in You Can't Take It With You, Ed Arnold plays, as I say, this Rockefeller type. But there's the hope of redemption. There's no redemption from Mr. Potter. He freely admits, friends mean nothing to me. The people mean nothing to me. I'll die alone, I'm happy with that. I've got the money. He never had a conversation with Grandpa. That would be good, the Battle of the Barrymores, that would be. So Mr. Potter buys up everything he can. We're told the life story of George Bailey through flashbacks, which are done from the point of view of his guardian angel Clarence. So it's a fantasy film, and a Christmas film, and a suicide drama, and yeah, many more things besides, romantic comedy, all sorts. It follows George Bailey through his life as his guardian angel Clarence gets caught up on his case so he can help at George Bailey's hour of need. And as we follow George through his life, we come to wonder what could possibly cause this man to need a guardian angel. The film opens literally with people praying for George and saying they hope he's alright. We constantly wonder why. Something happened, is he injured? I'm not sure. Again, we're going to go into spoilers because it's a wonderful life. George lives this wonderful, kind existence where, don't worry about it. Yeah, I run the savings and mortgages company, and I know you're 3 months behind on your payments, but tell you what, I'll pay it for you myself out of my pocket, and you pay me back when you can, if you can. Alright, just don't worry about it. He would actually these days be closed, probably put in jail just for cooking the books the way he does, the banker that funds his own. But that shows how cynical times have become, I suppose. That acts of kindness would be illegal these days. It would look like cooking the books. There would need to be investigations. But talking of cooking the books, we find out exactly why George does need help. His absent-minded uncle has lost £8,000 or dollars on the day of Christmas Eve of a big audit, and they're $8,000 short, and that $8,000 has been left not just anywhere, but been left in a newspaper that just so happens to have been put accidentally with Mr Potter. So the least likely person to return it and help George Bailey. And it's no surprise he doesn't help George Bailey. True to his word, Mr Potter is unrepentant till the end of days. There's no come to Jesus moment for Mr Potter in this movie. He remains one of cinema's great villains. You're waiting for Alan Rickman to turn up. Mr Potter, 2 points deducted from Gryffindor for your theft of $9,000, Mr Potter. That's my Alan Rickman. I know it needs a better word, but I think there's something there. And okay, I think we can just say what happens. George Bailey decides, I'm worth more to my family dead than alive. My uncle or me, one of us is going to go to jail because it looks like we've cooked the books because we can't come up with 8,000. It's going to look like embezzlement. So I don't want my uncle to go to jail, and we need the 8,000 or they'll take the house off my wife and kids. So the only way for me to get out of this is kill myself, and then at least they'll get the life insurance money. I'm pretty sure that invalidates life insurance, but don't tell George. Anyway, Clarence, his guardian angel. That's the moment. So we jump way back to the start of the film. That's the moment that he needs his guardian angel. George needs his guardian angel, Clarence, to intervene. So Clarence is all caught up, and this is where he needs to jump in and save George Bailey, because George Bailey is very much the kind of person worth saving. So Clarence tries to convince him, if you kill yourself, the world's just going to be a more miserable place without you. Nothing can appeal to George at this point, because it's not going to get him out of the situation. He says, sometimes I just wish I'd never been born. And that's where Clarence gets his idea. Yeah, okay, if I can't convince you with you shouldn't kill yourself, how about what if you'd never been born? So we see the events of the film for the last hour and a half. We see what they would have been leading up to if George Bailey hadn't been there every step of the way. So the lovely Italian gent that owns the bar, the bar is now owned by the assistant barman, but who in this reality is a horrible thug. The wannabe girlfriend for George, Violet, who's a bit of a girl about town, but not devilishly so in the old-fashioned sense, but she's a prostitute in this reality. Donna Reed is unwed and alone in this reality. Most tragically of all, when George was a little boy, he saved the life of his younger brother. And because George wasn't there in this reality, that he's now saying, the little brother wasn't saved, he died. And George's mother has no children. It's really affecting when you see it. Jimmy has to do some of those powerful acting of his career about 5 times in this film. Some of it's to convince you why you should fall in love with George Bailey. Some of it's to convince you why you could see he's at his wit's end because of the embezzlement problems and what's going to happen with his family and whatnot. And he prays so hard. And then some of it's to convince you that he will jump. But then his most difficult job is to convince you just how much he wants back from this alternate reality. Pottersville as it's called, because in this reality, Potter had his way. He bought out the Baileys. The Baileys, George Bailey wasn't there to set up the low-income mortgage scheme, where he would subsidise people on low income to have mortgages, so they were all forced into Mr Potter's slums. So Potter effectively, literally and figuratively, owns the town in this alternate reality. There have been some rather cynical readings of the film over the years that say, oh, but look at it, There's jazz music, there's a vibrant night scene, there's loads of people in the streets. Isn't that better than, talks of depressions and unemployment and whatnot? I think, well, okay, superficially, but the people maketh the town, and the people in Pottersville are horrible, or they are downtrodden, or they just have a miserable existence. Nobody's prospering in Pottersville, whereas everyone, even if they're not prospering in Bedford Falls, which is our real reality, at least has the knowledge that George Bailey will be there for them, that the rest of the town will be there for them, and that everybody pays it forward. So George's small acts of kindness as he goes through life are paid forward by other people's acts of kindness. And that takes us to the end of the movie, where George decides, I want to go back, please God, let me go back. And he gets to go back. And he's happy to now go to jail, anything, as long as his wife and kids are his wife and kids again. As long as they exist, and jail's one thing, but he couldn't see his wife like that, couldn't see his beloved town like that. The town that he's taken for granted because he's always felt that it's held him back. He's always had to sacrifice for the town, to give up his dreams, put them away, and then realises, a bit like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, the film, not the novel, that everything they really needs is in their own backyard. Probably not true in Dorothy's case, because there's absolutely nothing in her backyard. But in Bedford Falls, that is very much the case. He doesn't need the big city lifestyle. George Bailey is needed by the town more than George Bailey needs New York or Philadelphia, wherever. George has changed the lives of so many people, and he gets his reward, because just as it's about to transpire that he's going to be arrested and going to go to jail for that $8,000, everybody in town, because the word's gone out that George Bailey's missing on Christmas Eve, and that's just not George Bailey. Everybody in town is here, money in hand, ready to help, because they've heard about the 8,000. Because Mr Potter has made sure to tell the papers his mistake. So everyone knows why it is as well, and everybody comes money in hand. Remember that $20 that you let me away with, George? I'm here with interest. No questions asked. Everybody chips in. It's $20,000 plus. No problem. His friend from overseas, who's actually the most annoying character in the film, even with Mr Potter in it, because every time you see him on screen he goes, yeah. In his telegram, he says he'll advance George $25,000 for his kindness over the years. And in the telegram he says, in a movie full of kindness and compassion, and a little looking out for the other fella, he's the one person you wouldn't mind giving a good punch to. Yeah. Anyway, we won't go on about him. But yeah, it's just the most beautifully optimistic film, and these two, and Dos, make up a real cycle of film about the value of your friends, your family, kindness itself, virtue itself. It's its own reward, not for the sake of what you can get from it later, but just the knowledge that you've done the deed to help people should be enough to make you happy. And you'll probably find that when you do need someone later, they'll be there for you in spades, because you've always been there for them. And if they're not, then at least you get to sleep at night and say, well, I was there for them. You'll never be Mr Potter. Nobody's going to his funeral, except for those that want to make sure he's definitely dead. But yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts on it anyway. But I wanted to ask one favour, because I think it would be churlish to just examine these two, and have a look at them without taking on board the message. Just everybody do one random act of kindness that you don't need to, doesn't need to cost much, or just one small thing So my one, I decided, Anne, only, I know you watch all these, Anne, I know you've seen this now, and hadn't seen It's a Wonderful Life. So if you haven't seen that, you definitely ain't seen this. Well, you will do, because I sent you a copy today. So that's my act. So everybody, that's my challenge. You pay it forward, find a random act and tell that person. If you don't mind, pay it forward, but not to me, to somebody else. I think there was a Kevin Spacey movie called Pay It Forward, but we don't talk to Kevin Spacey. Don't talk. He's definitely a Mr Potter. So, but the good news is that whenever you do these acts of kindnesses, you get to hear a certain music in the air, certain. And every time you hear that noise, every time a bell rings, it's because an angel gets his wings. But if you'll excuse me, I think I'll go back to what I was doing earlier. See, I was feeling a bit glum, and I did say we wouldn't do any spoilers at all, really, for you can't take it with you, but Grandpa does teach us one important lesson, and that's when you are feeling glum, there's no point thinking it over too much. You'll only overthink it. So just sit back in a comfortable chair, get that sunshine, even if the blinds are half down. Pull out your old harmonica and play a little tune. Let's see, what can we play? Do you know Polly Wolly Doodle? Do you know that one? Alright, let's do it as a duet, you and me. Go get your harmonica. You can hit pause. Ready? Pause. And unpause. Ready now? Oh. Oh, I'm a bit out of practice, or it's a bit out of key. Went in a bit of Buffalo Gals, because It's a Wonderful Life. I'm not quite Sonny Boy Williamson or Little Walter, but well, you just keep me playing that. You play on top of it, and then make me sound better. That can be your act of kindness if you can't find anybody else to do it with today. So, hey, let's be kind every day. Yeah? Oh yeah, do me one last favour before you go though. Be careful in there, huh? Make things Bedford Falls, not Potters though. Goodbye, my dears. Love and mercy. Love and mercy.